Today I'm going to paint a mountain lake 4D landscape. I'm Olga Koelsch, watercolor artist, educator and a book author. Welcome to my studio. Firstly, I would like to find the horizon line. I want to lift it a little bit up from the middle, but not so much. On the reference, you see that the tree part almost on the level with the mountains. I think it would be more interesting if we place that close mountains a little bit towards us. I would like to make this almost monochrome painting. I will use Prussian blue as my main blue color. Indigo blue will always be good. Firstly, I dilute a lot my Prussian blue and I will start to paint background mountains. Very light, very diluted and very approximate shape, so to say. And I try to dilute it even more close to the horizon line. So I just wash my brush and remove excess pigments. I can also make the top of the mountain a little bit more interesting. I can add a little bit of contrast to the ribs of the mountains, something like this. And then at the same time I will start to paint the bottom part with the trees. So I grab with my other brush a little bit more bold mix of my blue. I will leave a little bit of area for my tree part on this side, so I will add bolder mix with the tip of the brush around this area. I can even lift up my mat so to let my dark blue flow into the watery mountain pot like this. So now we have trees in this corner. At the very tip of the brush, I would like to add a couple of very dry brush strokes. And with my clean brush, I can set up the directions. I can also drag up more up this bright part and create the idea of another layer of mountains, another mountain parts. And with the tip of the brush I will go on the top of this second layer of the mountains, and because they are a little bit closer to us we can see some trees, so I can add a couple of tiny little details on this side of the mountains. But I like to keep it all 4G, pretty abstract, like this. And then I will add a little bit more into the bottom area. And again, I will let it all move, flow back. With the tip of my brush, I can add one more layer. When we look at the mountains, we can see, so to say, layers. With the mountains, the more far away from us, we can't see any details. They almost vanishing in the fog. But the more they are getting close to us, the more we can identify tree silhouettes, some stones, some ribs. I try not to interfere much in the flow of my watercolor. I just try to add a bit of contrast to this very bottom part. Vertical lines will imitate trees, like this. Now let's paint the bottom part. I will paint in wet, but what I need to keep in mind that I will be painting this other mountain with larger trees. Therefore, I will try to keep this area in very light colors. But let's firstly glaze everything, all the bottom area. I come close to the horizon line. I want to make it flow organically from top to bottom now, like this. I will add my very diluted mix to this area around mountains because they reflects in the lake. Imagine they're painting a lake, can be some river. Reflections are usually a little bit darker because water has its color, so it also adds to the darkness of the reflection, but we are not overthinking it. And let's add a little bit more of flow in this area. I want just to play around with water and pigments. I lift up again my paper. When we paint water, it's very helpful if you move your brush more in a horizontal way. That will help you to imitate the water structure. And let's add more accents to one corner. I add some texture with clean and damp brush. We'll add a little bit more of dark points to the reflection part to make it very noticeable. Before we are painting the tree part, we need to dry this completely. Now everything is dry. I want firstly to prepare the mountain. I want to add a little bit of burnt sienna to my Prussian blue, and with brush strokes, relatively simple brush strokes, I start to create the mountain. To move it a little bit even more down from what I planned. So very simple, something imitating stones. And with my smaller brush and Prussian blue, I can add more contrast to the very bottom where this mountain gets into the water. Maybe I would like to move it slightly more into the lake, about 1/3, adding some texture. Now let's start to paint trees. Prussian blue I will mix with hint of neutral tint, so I will get more indigo color, or you can use ready one indigo. And let's draw some stems. I want one tree to be very high and couple of trees a little bit low, maybe like this. So I start with my super diluted indigo grayish bluish mix with small brush strokes just hardly touching the paper with the very tip of the brush, I create the silhouette of the tree, of the fir tree, and as I conveniently have a lot of different shades in my palette, I just bring some variety into my mix. The more we go down, the more dense gets the trees, but it's always nice if you think and leave more white untouched area in between. But the branches are getting bigger, so our painting area is also getting bigger. The washes are getting larger. I combine it. I try to add different mixes. It seems I wouldn't need this second tree. Nice if you move your brush, if you move your wrist, and therefore you will be able to create different edges of the tree. A little bit darker at the very bottom, something like this, maybe a little bit more. Yes. And now let's immediately paint the other one. While it all wet, we will be able to get nice bleeds between trees. And if you think it's mixing too much, no worries, we will separate them slightly later. Or maybe not. Let's see how it all will play around. Basically, brush strokes arranged around the tree. A little bit of burnt sienna. Nice. Now, for the stem, I will need very dark and bold mix, so I mix my Prussian blue with neutral tint. Ready, get my hand ready, and with the very tip of the brush, I start to paint in the tree trunk, and you can see in some areas it gets a little bit dissolved, and somewhere it keeps pretty dry. And let's also add a trunk to this smaller tree. And of course it's a big mass of trees around in this island, in this mountain, so we can just add the idea of big forest behind, just adding trunks. And with clean and damp brush you can go around, soften some of these parts a little bit more. The smaller tree will be in the front. This is why we can separate it a little bit from the big one with bolder mixes. Now, important part, the reflections. What's important, that the reflection, all the reflections, they should be flipped vertically and relatively precise. So let's start with the trunk, another trunk, just our main features, and from that point you can move your brush a little bit more freely, but trying to keep in mind the shape. So a little bit more here, measure the reflection. Yes, about like this. Basically, you move your brush horizontally, add different shades, and then just make a nice twist. Then same, it's a little bit, this is a bit darker one. Let's make it, let's keep it darker. Again, try to recreate the shape. Different colors. And this is a long tree, so the reflection will be even outside of our painting paper. And as a final touch, let's add some reflections for the mountains. This part, maybe add some dry brush strokes around, and let's divide the area, the mountain area, from the reflections with bolder brush strokes. And with the tip of the brush, let's again add more idea of tree trunks, mirroring the reflections a little bit more. The fun part comes. Let's remove tape. We have our mountain lake landscape. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope it was fun. Please let me know in comments what would you like to paint next. What painting ideas do you have for the 100-day project? And see you soon. Bye bye.